Gospel and Race Podcast. I'm so just thankful to be in the room again. We got a little different look today, not the normal brick wall, but it's all good.
It's beautiful.
We're doing what we can,
Yes.
and we are adamant, and we feel called to make sure we have very focused conversation of how race intersects with the church. We cannot divide the two. We've got to have conversations about how does the church address racial issues? How does the church lean into inequality? And this space is designed for us to bring knowledge and bring voices to help lean into this conversation. One of my favorite voices is here. I mean, I was able to get him back.
Glad to be here.
Pastor Marshall Hatch is in the room. Marshall Hatch Sr., just pastor in the west side of Chicago for many years. You all know him on this platform. And I just wanted him to come back to have some conversation with us. How you doing? You good?
Man, I'm super duper blessed. Had a birthday, a couple of days ago. I'm the big 6'8" now,
Check
so I feel like I'm a official senior citizen here.
But you running circles around even these young boys out here. You getting it done still.
I feel good. As long as God give me strength, I'm gonna keep on. As they say, I'm gonna stay on the battlefield till I die. What
is it about the resilient nature of especially black pastors in urban settings? Because there's this negative stigma where it's like we can't get them out the pulpit, but there's also a vitality that comes with this work. Like, what would you say to that?
Well, I understand the youth culture, because I've been young, and now that I'm not necessarily so young, I also can see the value of wisdom. And the value of experience and how valuable that is. That when I reached a certain age, I think it might have been maybe mid-50s or so. And, you never know if you're going to make it into senior citizen status. But I said to myself, if the enemy was going to kill me, it made more sense to do it when I was younger. Because, when you get, after a certain amount of experience, you're much more valuable because of the wisdom that you've acquired along the way. So I've got so much more wisdom that I think that is something that's of great value to the kingdom and to the community I serve.
Yeah. What's the word for you right now? Like what are you sensing? I know we have a lot of world cultural issues, problems, tensions. But what stream of hope do you have right now as a pastor?
I live by, I find myself always in my spirit, work while it's day. Because the night is coming. So, I try to live in every day. I think it's an incredible season to be a pastor, to be a preacher. Because, people are so disoriented because the world is so dysfunctional and confusing. And I've shared with younger pastors, I said, listen, if you notice the people are going to give you a listen right along through here, because you're in an age of fake news, of AI. People really don't know where to get trusted information. And they're giving preachers, with a certain anointing, another listen. And I really do. I've been telling young pastors, don't mess it up. Because they're giving you a shot now to.
So you can see this second wind of reception from people.
Absolutely. Where else you gonna get good information?
Yeah.
Where's you gonna get some insight, some oversight, and then, we have the scriptures, and so you've got this ancient wisdom. You've spent all of this time walking with the God of the Bible. So you got the Bible, and now you have this experience of walking with who the Bible reveals. And you're in this season. The Bible is the living word. It comes out of life, which means all of the illustrations and the stories and the narratives and the precepts that come out of that, it's all manifest in every season of life, every season of history. And so we really do have insight into the times. I just finished my class, God and Empire, at Northern Seminary. And all of Scripture almost comes to us written of stories against the backdrop of empire. Egypt and Exodus, then exile in Babylon and Persia, and then occupation, New Testament, under the Roman Empire. And so America is an empire. And to watch its machinations on the world stage, we know what we're looking at. And just like many cases, God's people have this vantage point from the belly of empire to understand what's going on. And so who but the preacher has that kind of insight, especially if we're exposed and studied and open to insight of the Spirit, understand a little geopolitics doesn't hurt. I mean, you can really begin to give people a sense of the word. One of the things that we have lived in a youth-oriented culture, but in this season of disorientation, I found that a lot of people appreciate the stability. For example, this is my 41st year of pastoring. People appreciate the stability of the long-distance runner. That, the world may be changing. We know God don't change. And you know what else doesn't change? Boy, that preacher's still preaching that same book, isn't he?
And people need
the stability.
When you're talking about leaders and stability, how much do we as pastors and leaders need to be acquainted with culture as much as we do with ecclesiology, within our particular context? Because, your ministry and your vocation has spanned beyond the pulpit. You know what I mean? So I've seen you on the news, talking in secular spaces. I've seen you preaching the gospel. What's your take on that? What would you tell a young preacher about how they engage culture and preach the gospel?
I think it's very helpful to be able to translate into culture the gospel. And so I hear some preachers in the public square be less effective than they could be because they're quoting scriptures that are verbatim, the way we do in the church context. But, it's like Message Bible and on the fly, can you paraphrase with the same principles of the Word of God and translate that into language so that people, get the word and can appreciate it in translation as opposed to using language that just doesn't resonate with them. So when you understand culture, when Paul it says, "In Him we live, move, and have our being," he's quoting a poem that people were, familiar with.
They would have understood.
They've heard that. They read that poetry book. And so we're translators.
That's one of the first things I learned in seminary. And it kind of messed me up as a young Baptist boy because some of the origin stories of Scripture had already been. They learned this in the Pentateuch. They're like, this story was actually roaming around for generations before it was ever written in Scripture. That messed me up. That messed me up when I remember going home one night looking at my Bible thinking like, oh man, you know what? But a lot of these, but because faith came up out of
it comes out of like if I was Muslim, I guess I would believe that the Quran came all together from on Mount Moriah to the prophet, just bound together. But in our faith tradition, it's organic. It's the word of life. It comes out of life. So when you read Psalm 119, it's almost like a logic there. First there is what they call the testimonies, the oral culture. and then the testimonies have these sort of morals to them, and in our translation we call them judgments.
Yeah.
The moral to the story,
Yeah.
and then the judgments or the morals reoccur.
Yeah,
So you can
yeah.
now you can develop precepts out of them, and then the precepts are so continually reoccurring. It's because these are eternal principles.
These are themes.
They're commandments.
Yeah,
and then the
yeah.
commandments are so eternal. You should write them in stone, statutes, and you can almost see the process by which the Word of God comes to us out of people's real human experience.
It's almost like seed time and harvest, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's almost like when Willie Jennings was at Pilgrim, when he was talking about putting his hand in the soil.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The soil of the earth.
It's
And
organic.
It's organic.
And we live in it now.
Yeah. That's why the scripture's living.
That's why it's the living word. I mean, the stone that the builders reject always becomes the chief cornerstone. And it was the lens through which I understood well before it had come to pass. Laquan McDonald, who had been killed, shot 16 times by a police officer.
Yep.
And it becomes one of the most prominent names in the history of the city of Chicago's narrative. He was a ward of the state. Once I understood that, he was an orphan. I said, oh, this is that divine poetry again. And of course, so much of the power dynamics around the city it revolved around an orphan. And even to this day, it still has incredible moral power.
It becomes this cornerstone.
It becomes a cornerstone. The rejected. So the margins brought to the center is the work of the kingdom of God when you begin to see a holistic and sort of systematic tying together of the biblical narratives and principles. Yeah.
Give me a word. So our church is in a series about the kingdom.
Yeah.
One thing I'm learning about the kingdom is this organic nature of growth and why Jesus would continue to use seed and seed time and harvest and seed is scattered and we know not how it grows, right? That which seems insignificant becomes the bedrock for something significant. Like when we talk about justice and we talk about ward of the state, right? We talk. How do we translate that as the kingdom of God breaking in? Because he's there, right? Like he's there.
And we become vessels. Once that becomes like innate in us, it's the way we move in the world.
Yeah.
So we're always looking for the people on the margins or the overlooked, the sense of being salt and light at all times, bringing the kingdom everywhere you go, every encounter. A person like me would be, very sensitive to people that are working certain jobs. I never forget, if I want to tear up, I'll think about this little girl. I think she was, Hispanic, I assumed. And, you go to the Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
And have you found anybody that's had a bad customer service experience? Something they do, you have a great customer service experience.
In there. Yeah.
So the girl is outside. Then you start noticing how young they are. These are kids, and so there must be something in the ethos of this, the way that they bring kids to their first jobs, and they teach them how, it's my pleasure. And just,
Sure.
But I just remember once coming through the line, the girl is outside, and I order something, and then so I'm doing what I like to, who I want to be with people, workers, and so the girl says, "Thank you for being kind."
Wow.
And it was clear to me she's working with the public.
Yeah.
And everybody isn't kind.
Yeah.
But she has to be kind, and then she thanks me for being kind. That's the inbreaking of the kingdom. That everywhere you go, you're representing the kingdom with this understanding of everybody's in the image of God, and you're the salt of the earth, and your kindnesses and your gentleness and your graciousness as one who has received grace. You know, when Barnabas goes to Antioch, and the people were so nice to him, he says that it was clear that they had been well taught. They had received grace and made them gracious. And then they were first called Christians there, not because of any spectacular spiritual manifestations, but they were just so nice, is the way I like to preach.
They was just
they were so nice. They were so nice.
It just pays to be
They
nice.
were people who, well, you know, once you internalize that everything about who you are is a reception of grace, it makes you gracious.
It sure does.
It makes you, I mean, it makes
that's good.
you just pretty much a nice person every day.
Right.
Once you understand that everything about you is because of the reception of grace, you know. So
Now everything I do must extend.
it makes you
that
gracious.
grace.
Yeah, well, it's in you. You walk in it, you know.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, that is the kingdom. I mean, we're not dying to get in the kingdom. We're in the kingdom now.
Yeah.
And every day is another opportunity. You know, to walk in it, to be salt, to be light, to make, you know, the world experience what it is to be in the presence of the love of God. You know, that's how we live.
That's powerful. I love it.
And that's encounters. And a few times we don't get it right.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember one time, you know, preachers should never be the hero of all their stories. You know, this guy was begging outside 7-Eleven. I just wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
And so I walked right past the guy, you know. And then on the way out, this clearly blue collar, working class Hispanic guy reaches in and gives the guy $1. And man, am I convicted getting one in my car. You know, here I am getting love offerings. I'm ignoring the man. And so the chastening of, you know, trying to always, you know, be in the grace space so that it can emanate from you. And we don't always get it right.
Right.
But we do get it right more and more.
That's right.
As we grow from grace to grace.
Amen. Receiving grace, we give grace.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a loaded question, but I want to talk about like race in America. We can also talk about the church as well. And it's a random question, but have things gotten any better
in the culture?
In the culture,
no. We have retreated and we have regressed.
We have regressed,
and that happens historically in America. It's one of the great tragedies.
Is this we've regressed from all the work that's been done, civil rights movement? Prior.
Oh, you no longer have many of those rights. I mean, you can't sue anybody for race on a job right now. And so a lot of that has, being diverse, equal, and inclusive is a dirty word and maybe illegal.
Yeah.
So we have seen this pattern of reconstruction to deconstruction, to reign of terror. I mean, and it's one of the patterns of America. It's the white lash, often called the backlash. People just benefit so greatly from privilege that there's an incredible recoil. So what we call race relations in America is probably headed toward a place that I think that it can be a little frightening.
The regression, is this regression a mixture between, let's say, black exhaustion and increased power and privilege? Like what can we attribute that to? Is it just the increased disdain?
Part of it is the political cycle.
Yeah.
And then in America, a lot of it is specifically driven by the demographics. So, as of now, as of like the last few months, the article was circulating for the first time in American history. There are more non-black babies being born daily than white.
Right.
And so much of what we are experiencing is a reaction to the demographic trends. And, so you can see in America, Civil War has already started. Civil War is basically, it's in the future. I don't want to say it's inevitable.
Sure.
But it is already started. It's not necessarily a shooting war right now, necessarily. But when there are two diametrically opposed visions of the future.
Yep.
So even America is going to be sort of a multi-racial, diverse democracy, which is probably how you can get people to live pluralistically and all have a stake in, be stakeholders. Or it's going to balkanize, and people are going to basically retreat and conflict in small subsets. And then maybe a minority of people figure out how to control, say, the power and the politics, like South Africa.
Right.
And during the apartheid system. How to control the sort of, how the schemes that governments create, maybe like the nation state Israel and what it has done to the Palestinians under its control, where a minority figures out how to control a majority. And that is a future America's headed for. So whenever you hear, of voter suppression schemes or rethinking the 14th Amendment by which people who weren't citizens were made citizens, grafted in, literally, amended in. Those two different visions of what America is are diametrically opposed, and that's normally what the hot war becomes over.
Right.
Because you can't have both futures at the same time. It's going to be, as Lincoln said, right, all together one or all together the other.
Right. So that's the combustion. That's the war.
These are incongruous. That these are two conflicting visions. Now, it's got to be one or the other.
That idea of demographic is very interesting to me because demographics are being watched.
Yes.
This is a fear space.
Yes.
This is a fear space in that minorities would then become the majority, where power would then be reversed. Am I hitting that right?
Oh yeah.
Is that what's going on?
And yes, and there is a for example, most people don't know. Here's just a little political science. Neither of Clinton's terms, neither of Obama's terms, 4 presidential elections, none of them does that candidate, Clinton twice, Obama twice, get a majority of the white vote. Neither time. 39%, close to 40%, because that's the winning combination.
Yeah.
So, 'cause it's not all white people. I mean,
right.
It's just some white people, based on who they are, what their values are, they don't have any problems. This is what we are. We're diverse. We're the American out of the many one. They buy into the aspiration, and then of course, people who've been marginalized buy into the aspiration. The unique thing about American history, getting ready to celebrate 250th year, well, that's not really entirely accurate. The America of the aspirations, where out of the many one, where you can become, a citizen and the Constitution applies to you, that's Frederick Douglass. That's not Thomas Jefferson. That's Civil War and post-Civil War. The real founding father is Frederick Douglass. The book is called Prophet of Freedom. one of the great bios on Frederick Douglass. I think the author's name is Brinkley, because he's the visionary, the AME minister.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just for blackness. He begins to visualize first woman suffrage, and then also, you know, the immigrants, people coming in. You can become an American if you agree to these principles that are really based upon everybody being made in the image of God, you know.
This is a prophetic ideal by Frederick Douglass.
Yes.
Of inclusivity.
Inclusivity from everywhere. You
From
come,
everywhere,
bring
yeah.
us your tired, poor, huddled message, yearning to be free. You know, the Statue of Liberty is a gift from France for the abolition of slavery to America. Be a beacon of light to the world.
An example.
It's an example of everybody having some intrinsic worth. You know, and those are theological ideas.
That's what I'm going.
Yeah.
This is a theological posture
in the public square.
Yeah, humanity, Imago Dei, right?
Right. Everybody. And that is what one person, one vote is based upon, the theological principle of the intrinsic worth of every human being. One person, one vote. You got a billionaire, you're supposed to get one vote. You on welfare, you get one vote.
You get a vote.
But when the politics are poison, then you can buy more voice with your money.
Right.
And so that's where we begin to see the corrosion. The case was Citizens United back in about 2012. I write about it in my book, Project America. Not a shameless plug there. But I talk about, you know, that the politics has been poisoned because now corporations became a person and their speech can't be limited, and therefore now the money has influenced politics and sort of, thwarted that sort of equality of individuals when it comes to voting.
The politics are no longer integral because they've been convoluted by
compromised by money.
Yeah, by money. Well, so like being Black, African American, if we were to have like a family meeting right now, what is your State of the Union address? And I'm not trying to isolate us.
And these for African Americans?
For African Americans living in this culture today, and mainly because a lot of your scholarship, your pastoral ministry has been very inclusive to all humanity, but your context has been in the urban space with Black people. What's our State of the Union address today?
Well, I would say more than what would my sermon be, what would my theology be, my understanding of the way we have processed history at our best. So when we say the Black church tradition, we have, for the most part, concluded that the reason for the agony of our oppression, the redemption out of that is we come through this empire with this capacity to love and this capacity to be a redemptive force from this empire for the whole world. So that's, not only Martin Luther King, but that's, Denmark Vesey, that's, to some great extent, Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth, that our coming out of this empire, that we should have some type of salvific substance to offer the world, that, universal human rights. A lot of that comes out of our sense of being able to deal with our degradation, that the meaning for our odyssey has to be higher. And so our goal is not to pay somebody back, but our goal is to lift humanity to a higher level out of what we have survived. That's what Blackness really means at its core in America.
That's what Blackness is suffrage through empire. that then offers to the world
That's right.
a redemptive, salvific posture to say all should and can be free.
So Martin's last book, Chaos or Community, that's the case that he's making. I was sharing that with somebody earlier today. You know, I went to Japan some years ago, and I was where the bomb was dropped in I think Hiroshima. And you know, it took me to the Spirit of King, where he was by 1968. That war itself probably needs to be outdated because the technology has now made war so destructive that it threatens the planet and the species. And so it's either nonviolence or annihilation or self-destruction. It's either chaos or community. We must either learn to live together as brothers and sisters or we'll perish as fools. Literally the beloved community. And, you know, for us, that vision comes out of Jubilee, you know, the economic viability of every family, everybody under their own fig tree. All of these things for us has been an embrace of the Bible in an enfleshment in a way that we believe that our calling is to help usher this kingdom in our lifetimes. Of course, we know that God is going to, you know, ultimately be in charge, but we're co-laborers with God. And we're instruments in the hand of God, and that's the way we should spend our lifetimes. That is a central part of our faith tradition as African Americans.
It's so powerful too, and it's so unique. It almost feels like a prophet called to a chaotic moment.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you think about the prophets of old, think about like a Jeremiah, like all of the dissension, the talk about the problems he went through, you know, this weeping prophet to then deliver a word from God. It's almost, you know, it's almost like our story.
It's a prophetic, it's prophetic, you know, it's the sort of substance of the Messianic tradition. You know, that the suffering has to have redemptive value. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense.
Right.
So the way you make sense out of it is the suffering servant. You know, suffer so that there is a light, you know, for the nations. You know, we go ahead. But we were talking off the record. You know, the times which we live right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is, you know, this is a very dangerous time.
Yeah.
And it, you know, people in very high places are contemplating what has been unthinkable.
Yeah.
And that's nuclear conflict with nuclear weapons. And, you know, and if you don't think that that's real, if you want to make a good financial investment, invest in people that are producing bunkers. That tells you what you need to know. People are building bunkers. You know what else they're doing? They're buying islands and yachts.
What's interesting
somewhere to ride out the catastrophe.
What's interesting is we're seeing this in mainstream media and art. You know what I mean? I was talking to my brother-in-law the other day watching a show that, and we're sitting there thinking to ourselves, it's almost, you know, art imitates life. Like the things that they're showing on this show with bunkers and new worlds being created and underground, that cannot just come out of left field. Like nobody's just being artistic with that. That there is some sort of clue in to as to something that may be needed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, don't sound like conspiracy theories like that, but when you look, when I look at art, being an artist, when I look at art and how it's displayed and being given a picture of possibility, you start to think to yourself.
I remember when the Will Smith movie about
I Am Legend, right?
I think that's it.
I think
with the
so.
cameras everywhere.
And the whole place was shut. The whole place was obliterated. The whole world.
Well, it was some about, I forget what it was, but it was like cameras everywhere. Everywhere you went, you were surveilled. And it was so, it was sort of futuristic when that particular movie came out. Well, pretty much now. Doorbells and everything. If we need to piece together, and try to solve a crime, you find out how much of your movements today were recorded somewhere. I'm not value judging, one way or the other. I'm just saying it seemed far fetched, but now it's something that we take for granted. So, and again, we're not alarmists, but I think the prophet has to be truthful. You can't, prophesy peace when there is no peace. And so, but our role is to preach peace and reconciliation, and be salt and be light. And because I see the danger, it has made me given me more of a sense of urgency in my ministry, whatever time I have left. And to preach, Jesus Christ is the answer. Now, how do you communicate that in the public square? How do you live it? How do you communicate it? And then when you see what's going on, the urgency of that in all of the places that you function.
Right.
Even if it's just, spread. One of the things that I do, to show you how the racial dynamics of ministry, of moving in the world, I always call. It's gonna seem a little like random, but I always call a young African American working at the most menial job in my interaction, sir. Always.
Dignity, respect.
It's part of my assignment to bring the salt, the flavor everywhere. And urgently. Now, I know what that does. You got a guy, I'm old enough to be his grandfather. But he's working. And I know that, in this culture, people denigrate and, degrade. But as for me, thank you, sir. And watch what it does for that young man who's doing a menial job. And that's what I mean by urgency. To be salt and light, because it is later than we think. Whatever is coming.
I mean, it's late. I remember being a little kid hearing that in church all the time. It's late in the day. It's late in the hour. And we probably had reason to consider that with what was going on in culture at the time. But when you really look at what's going on now,
it's like sure enough.
It's late in the evening.
Sure enough late. And the sun is going down.
Wow. Tell me what you think about this. How can you explain to us Black activism?
Yeah, well, that is, again, I was just thinking about that, when I was sharing with you the ways I feel the Spirit moving on me in small ways. That, and I can also do press conferences. And also know that, what a lot of people maybe don't think of, news is made. And so, it's a skill set that we learn from people like Reverend Jesse Jackson, who I used to travel with, in the early part of the 2000s, all across the world. Literally, that's an art form. I think he learned it from Martin King, how to use media, camera, and to criticize a chasing camera. There's such a thing.
Really?
Oh, yeah, well, to create news. So if we do we have a group called Leaders Network that's really styled after Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and we were trained by, Operation Push, Rainbow Push. And so, my little West Side group of pastors, we know how to do a press release, and we may have a conversation. You think got enough red meat in it? Need a little more red meat in there, you know. And so it's an art form, and it's a use of media, and it's as legitimate as televangelism has been. How do you know, communicate in a larger platform to a broader audience? And we're representing the gospel.
Yeah.
You know, and the people get a certain amount of, you know, inspiration, you know, a certain amount of sense of hopefulness. Preachers fighting for their causes. That's a part of the church tradition. I never forget the brother that retired from Moody. What was his name? He was the long-serving pastor there. I always thought it would come to me. But he was a long-serving pastor at Moody Church. And, boy, if I said his name, everybody would know it. But he served a long time. I mean, decades, and recently retired, I want to say maybe within the last 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
But we were sitting at some table, and they had called a group of pastors in a setting with black and white and Hispanic. And you would have never thought you would have heard this coming out of this guy's mouth, but I tell you, he sure said it. It's the pastor of Moody Church. And he said, now we need to listen to these black pastors because they really know what the pastor's role is in this culture. And I remember the illustration he gave. He said that it's going to come to me after this broadcast.
Yeah.
But he said, now see, he said he had a white preacher saying, he said, what did he say? I don't worry about the pond. You know, Lord just told me to go fishing. And so we just, you know, fishers and men fish in the pond. And he told the guy in private, he said, don't say that anymore. You don't know how really ignorant that is. He said, you know, because if all the fish you was fishing for come from downstream, and by the time they get to you, they half dead, you'd have to go see what's happening upstream.
You got to go see what's happening.
I didn't say, I mean, I have to give him credit for that.
Yeah.
But and so, you know, what we call black church activism, it is really an art form because the black church itself, it comes about as a protest against an oppression.
Yeah.
Its origin story is a protest. It's against oppression, against, you know, that if you're black and Christian in 1796, say when the AME Church was founded, or, you know, 1800, you know, and you've been, 1816, there's been enslavement 200 years by then in America, because it's race-based. You can't really conceive of a God who doesn't have as their number one agenda emancipation. That's the only God you could even conceive of.
Right.
And so the black church is born in reaction to that, and so it had to be very creative in the way that it has been an instrument of resistance. And activism is one of those, and learning the arts and the crafts of activism. You know what Dr. King actually did? He learned how to use media in a time that media emerged. So I was just down in Selma, you know, Bloody Sunday, when the marchers were beat on the bridge in, I think, 65. The problem with that footage is it was a time when the quality and the technology of being able to broadcast footage was global, and it went all over the world.
So Martin Luther King, he knew what he was doing.
With intentionality.
It wasn't random that he was showing up.
Reverend Jesse Jackson learned it from him.
He learned that from him.
And I learned it from Reverend Jesse Jackson, how to do it. You know, we've been fighting 133% tax increase, the largest in the city of Chicago.
Right.
And it's not because I want to do that. I don't have nothing else to do. I still got sermons prepared, people to visit in the hospital. But I know how to do it.
Yeah.
I know how to create a news story.
Yeah.
You know, and we write the press releases. Is there enough red meat in there?
Yeah.
And then if you do it enough times, this is those people's jobs.
To go get the red meat.
Yeah.
I gotta have
It means
that.
you can now personally call them. You know, I just sent you a release. Did you get it?
Yeah.
You know, because the activists and the media people, you know, one of the things that was very interesting to me when we were protesting just recently the tax increase, trying to figure out who to blame, because the poorest community has the largest property tax increase in Chicago. That's what's happening. So West Garfield Park, 133%, one of the poorest communities in the city out of the 77 community areas. And what was interesting is so you had media people with some sense of consciousness of the injustice of this, and you know, off camera they egging you on. I'm so glad y'all doing this. This is not right. And then they, you know, so you know, there's some convergence of interest.
Yeah.
It's an art form.
I never saw it as an
Black
art form.
church, you know, has had to develop methods of resistance because it is a vehicle of resistance for oppressed people.
I've never heard about press or media coming out of Black resistance as an art form. That we had to learn how to get messages out to the masses.
And yeah, but it's a skill set, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, people like Jesse Jackson or King or Sharpton, I criticize. Oh, they just chasing cameras. You know, Sharpton.
That was the criticism.
That's the criticism,
yeah, okay.
normally. You know, they just chase camera. And Sharpton is sort of a very, I want to say, plain-spoken person.
Yeah.
So he said, yeah, that's right. He said people don't call me to keep a secret. He said they call me because they want some light shined on something.
Yeah.
And you know, I never forget the first time, 99 was the first sort of campaign thing. I was with Reverend Jackson. It was these kids had been kicked out of school in Decatur, and it was my first time sort of in that orbit. And it was a media circus. He went down there and, you know, stoked it because these kids were kicked out. They didn't have anything for them. They were just kicked out. They was been engaged in a fight. They were African Americans, predominantly white community, and he just went down there and stoked it. But I'm riding in the back of the car. This is almost my introduction to be on the inside of that orbit. I'm riding in the back of the car with one of the mothers of one of the kids. And she said, "Thank you, Jesus. I prayed to the Lord." Because her son was just kicked out of school. And that was it. And the Lord done sent Jesse Jackson.
Oh, man.
I mean, because if you're the one without power, you know, and somebody can come in and highlight your issue, that the powers of be have to respond.
That's a thank you, Jesus moment.
That's a thank you, Jesus moment for her, it was.
I want to hear about, as the nation mourns the passing of Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jesse Jackson. I mean, I met Reverend Jesse Jackson one time. I went to Rainbow Push. We were doing something with Northern Seminary. I think you were there. I'm not sure if you were there, but we did something with Push, and we were invited back. A couple pastors invited back, and I was like, y'all want me to go back there to Jesse's? Yeah. Reverend Jackson wants y'all to come back. I'm like, okay. I never met the man. Right? Met him in his office. I'm like, oh my goodness. And when I met him, you know, he's very cordial. So glad to meet you. Immediately after that, he's giving me instructions about something that he want me to be at.
That's right.
The next week.
That's right.
And it was the most surreal moment for me, you know, growing up watching Reverend Jesse Jackson. You know, and I remember him pacing. He started pacing in his room. He had the news on in his office, and he said, "Hey, Pastor, I need you in Nashville, Tennessee next week." I mean, what do you mean?
Right,
I need you in
right.
Nashville. We're gonna go protest. Blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah. And I'm like, Reverend, I can't. I can't go. I'm not in the movement right now.
That's right. Yeah.
But I'll never forget that moment
Yeah.
because he was so locked in
Always.
to where he was going next, to advocate for some single mothers or some
Something.
sort. So what was that world like with Reverend Jesse Jackson? Because you walked alongside him.
Indescribable, the whirlwind of it. Indescribable. I mean, I write about it again, some of it when I did memoirs that I published, the ones I published in 2012, what it felt like to go to the Holy Land, and it's like 7 of us, the guests of the Jerusalem Council of Churches, and he has this vision that you have the Israelis and the Palestinians in some peace march. And that was, trying to make that happen, which it didn't. But, to be met at the airport by the Israeli Foreign Minister, Sharon Peres. At that time, he's treated like a head of state. And then the Israeli brass right there in the airport hangar. And then to go across into Gaza, and then the West Bank, and at Arafat's compound.
Wow.
And then the PLO brass there. And, I talk about it, but the indescribability of what it meant to be, number one, with that connection to Martin King, who I admired, and everything you express, he used his celebrity as part of his thing, but he was indefatigably locked in. I never forget, we stayed in this public housing apartment here in Chicago one night. It's something he was publicizing, and the media followed and everything, and we were in these people's house. He's staying in the apartment.
Yeah.
It's on Stateway Gardens. And so we spent up that night talking, and I think that's when I had realized, I think it was like late 99 or 2000 or something. They were trying to figure out who the man of the century or something was going to be, and he was thinking about Martin Luther King was really his. And that's when it dawned on me. He was talking about Dr. King, who had been dead almost 30 years. Well, 20 or 30, 68 to 78, 78 to 88, yeah. Toward the end of that, of the 20th century, like he had just died yesterday. And that's when I realized how much that man had impacted him as a father figure. One of the most tearful things, there's a recent biography, but I knew about it because I had heard it firsthand.
Yeah.
Martin had got upset with him because he was young, he's brash, he's aggressive. And he really very rarely lost his cool, I understand, but he tells him this time, Jesse, if you want to do something on your own, go and leave me out of it. And Jesse was shattered as a young man, 23, 24.
Yeah.
And he says, don't throw me away, Doc. Don't throw me away.
He wanted it so bad.
He wanted his affirmation.
Yeah. Don't throw me away.
And that drove him 60 years. He thought he had gotten an assignment from Dr. King. And that's where the energy came from.
Yeah.
And you remember before he died, he's in the wheelchair protest. I think that I told my son, I said, because we talked over the years, I said, there was a time Jesse had lived too long. He had become the villain. I'd seen him shouted off of stages, as the Young Bucks came, took over. We were in downtown for the Laquan McDonald's thing. We went out of the Jenna 6th. I just saw it happen several times. Even at one of those King anniversary things, April 4th, he shouted off the stage. He had a quality, though. I remember the first time he came rolling up in a wheelchair to a protest several years ago.
Yeah.
He said, "Don't be ashamed of me, Reverend." I said, "Oh, no, Reverend." He said, I told Marshall the fact that he was, I don't know what you call it, we saw his decline.
Yeah.
He became beloved again. He did not hide. He got to the point he couldn't talk, mumbled.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to watch that process. He became beloved again because he was so open with his physical decline.
Right.
That you would have thought he might have had too much pride. No.
Right.
But the point that I'm raising, he believed Dr. King gave him an assignment, and he was going to stay on it.
That's what drove him.
That's what drove him. I mean, he gave him an assignment, and till he died.
Wow.
It's something fascinating to watch up close, and we often critique one another in ministry, and doctrine, and the da-da-da-da-da, but I never expect people to agree. That's the human experience tells me they don't. But, when I can see the depth of that character, of that kind of stuff, it just inspires me.
Yeah.
I want to run my course.
That's right. Will we see that again?
No, I don't think you see that. What's happening now, there's so much distance. Now we're seeing the last of the eyewitnesses of Dr. King's assassination die off. That can't be reproduced. Death is a strange thing. You don't really know who anybody is until the moment of their death. And then it starts crystallizing. And so, I don't think we see anything again. It shouldn't be. It is what it was. When you travel with somebody, seen them up close, it's Reverend Akron and I talked about, we knew his funeral was going to be big and stuff. We know it's going to be that big.
That was big.
Where you would get pushed off the stage.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. But it became a celebrity event. There was a lot of jockeying.
Yeah.
And, again, I think the family was incredibly gracious, though. It was a wonder to behold. I think I was sharing with you offline, how all of the siblings, found ways to love each other.
Yes.
I thought was an incredible example of African-American Christianity in particular, that is very organically loving.
Yes.
In all of the permutations of how family comes about and how we find ourselves.
I want to end with this. Would you say the church, when I think about Reverend Jackson, anywhere there was pain, it seems like that's where he wanted to go.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good thing.
What I mean?
It's a good thing you didn't go with him to Nashville.
Really?
He was so singular focused, he just burned you out and just keep going. You never knew when to stop. You had to know when to stop.
You had to.
If you had something else that Lord called you to do, you needed to.
You got to do that.
Because he's going. And like he just met you, and he's telling you need to go to Nashville, Reverend, and the da-da-da.
That was normal, though.
That was normal.
Knew that life.
I do that life, yeah. And, and I ended up in Israel in 2001 with him.
We got to go to
I
Israel.
had a trip to Zimbabwe that I took every year. And it might have been Tuesday, and it was leaving Thursday when I got a call from Cecilia in his office. Reverend Jackson wants you to go with him to the Middle East. When they leaving? Thursday. So, I'm like, okay. And I had to go to the airport. This was before 9/11, really right before. And it was a white woman who I needed her to get my ticket changed from Zimbabwe, get me
Oh man, you had to
get me to the Middle East,
Yeah.
then get me 10 days later back to London, and then get me down to Zimbabwe. And back then, and this woman, God is my witness, it was an incredible testimony. She said, well, because I went to the airport to do it in person.
Yeah.
She said, I was just watching Joyce Myers, and she was preaching about Peter walking on that water. She said, you know, sometimes you got to get out of the boat. Wait a minute. And then she stopped.
She started going.
I don't know who the lady was. She was an angel, and she had gotten me an itinerary, spend 10 days in the Holy Land, and then catch up with my group later.
Wow.
Yeah, but, you know, to have to drop everything was part of, that was his experience of with King. So
Yeah. Oh,
I just don't think
so. It was the same rhythm
Dr.
with
God,
King.
he left. He came initially to Chicago to you know, after he didn't do the football thing, to go to Chicago Theological Seminary.
Okay. Yeah.
And then he meets King, and Dr. King, you know, did they see his drive or whatever, and said, you know what, you can learn more from me in 6 months than you can in that seminary.
You lying? He said that.
And he dropped everything. He said he went and talked to Jackie, his wife, and she said, you know, just do what you got to do.
Wow.
So yeah, I've never seen anybody really. That's one of the examples, but that was one of my lessons I've learned in ministry in 40 plus years. I've never really seen the Lord bless anybody that at some point and do anything extraordinary, you know, but like you're doing here, without that risk of faith.
Mm.
And it's great to be moral. It's great to be nice.
Yep. Yep.
It's great to have great character.
Yep.
I haven't seen any substitute for faith when it comes to pleasing God.
Just believing that God will do it.
Something, a risk.
Yeah.
Some leap of
Yeah.
faith.
Oof.
You know, I left a job because the old preachers had, you know, like your grandfather,
Yeah.
they had us psyched out back in those days that we had come into the ministry to suffer, and that you just greedy if you got a church and you gonna get a job too.
Really?
And so they made us, you know, quit our jobs. I quit a job with the city. And Reverend Clarence Hilliard, who was a legend, laughed in my face because I was kind of like nervous because I had just did it. And I told him what I did, and he laughed. He said, "You're going to find out now what God can do."
Wow.
And so it was part of where I began to kind of, not just job stuff,
Yeah.
but when it comes to something, you know, like you moving into this
Yeah.
facility,
Yeah.
God really does bless faith. And I've never seen, so that was Jesse's story. He literally, and this is like African-American Christianity, which can be very biblical.
Yeah.
He dropped everything
And just went
and
after.
followed him.
That's it.
He left everything. And family suffered. That you know, you're disturbed by how he met Clay Evans.
No, I don't know that. I don't know the story.
Doctor listened to the preacher on the radio, and they had some kind of food giveaway line. He had to go get some food.
That's what they were referencing at fellowship
at the
this
funeral.
couple weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why he was, you know, that was their church, Doc. All his kids there, you know, they love Reverend Clay Evans and the other pastors because they pastors of fellowship, but really Reverend Clay Evans, you know.
But they was giving food away, and this is what
they had to go get in the food line.
Yeah.
And so, you know, yeah. But I've seen that so many times in my own ministry and in my experience, you know. So the church I'm at now, you know, when I did leave secure city job, I had a small church in Lawndale down the street from your granddad. The whole church seated about 65 people. And I was really angry because I thought God had forced me out like that, you know. And I went through a lot of, different changes on how I came to that conclusion that this is what I got to do. I just up and did it, quit. And I was called to the church I'm at now exactly 1 year later.
Wow.
And those churches back then, the church like the one I got, they would only consider you if you were a full-time minister. And so they asked me, was I full-time? I said, oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I tell them,
absolutely.
only for the last 365 days.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
it wouldn't have been the same if
Yeah.
it had looked like I had something,
Right.
made a decision based
right.
on some,
Right.
visual evidence. It has to be the evidence of things not seen, It's so, and it's worked that way my whole life.
The whole life.
I mean, the reality of God, just and the ways that the scriptures, we back where we end where we start, right? Is the living word, and it's just alive.
Yeah.
And you live in the world of the scriptures, it keeps coming to pass.
And everything is being produced out of that reality.
Every time I see arrogance and hubris, I know it's not going to end well for somebody. And so when I see the Secretary of Defense bragging about bombing and killing, and we're the strongest, and and everybody knows, if you got strength, you need some humility with that.
That's right.
Because the haughty spirit is before the fall. That's in the Bible.
That's in it. Yeah.
And that's the time I get the most nervous. You know the time I get the most nervous?
What's that?
Is when I'm full of myself and I know that I am.
Yep.
And I be like, you got to humble yourself.
Gotta get
Because
off,
if you don't, God is able to humiliate you. And I don't want that. I tell the Lord, wait a minute, let me work on myself. I can work on myself. Lord, I'm sorry.
Give me a chance to just, I'll make this right.
Let me try to get out of myself.
Oh, my
Because,
goodness.
you get there, you talk to people any kind of way. You're full of yourself. I teach the pastoral ethics, and, I say, look, in the black church tradition, y'all, you ain't seen an anniversary till you seen a pastor's anniversary.
Oh, you ain't seen it?
In the black church where the pastor done served. I said, but every pastor know that if you ever get to the point that you believe what people feel like they got to say in order for you to be their pastor, if you ever believe that's true, you in trouble. Don't you believe that yourself? And but it plays out on the global stage.
It's
and
the same.
Yes, I know how this ends. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Pastor, your wisdom today has been, man, I love talking with you.
Appreciate you.
Man, thank you so
and
much
the
for
benefit
coming.
of sharing with the audience.
Yeah. Well, so tell you mentioned a couple of your books because I think they're super important, especially the memoirs book. I've got those, but tell us what those books are.
I got Project America, that is my memoirs that I published in 2012.
Yeah.
And it is about what it felt like to develop a worldview, coming through my black church tradition into the halls of academia, to eventually doing social justice work, to traveling the globe, but yet coming from public housing in Chicago. And then what I see, what I think we're ahead, and I've been pretty much spot on, I think, about where the country was going and where it is. And so that I pushed that in 2012, and I did grow up in public housing. My family is exhibited at the National Public Housing Museum. They recreated our apartment at Jane Addams Public Housing here in Chicago, the National Public Housing Museum, because we live there. And then my second book is just came out last spring. It's called Cornerstones. and it's a book of 10 eulogies that I preached. It's really the vignettes and the eulogies.
Yeah.
So it's not just a funeral sermon book, but it's about urban ministry, preaching with the task of preaching a funeral, making use out of every life, speaking truth to power,
Yeah.
comforting the discomforted. Sometimes using media platform, because I've had these high-profile funerals, and then setting up that vignette, and then what word was delivered in that context that day. So it's 10 in 1 year. So it's the year 2016, which was the year after the Laquan McDonald tape dropped in Chicago. And so it's almost like August Wilsonian, where there's a slice of Black life, a slice of urban ministry, and I offer up these 10 eulogies and the context of that, and I call it cornerstones, because when the Laquan McDonald tape dropped, I was in the mayor's group with a group of pastors, and we were being scolded by Mayor Rahm Emanuel. But I had heard on the way there that the kid was a ward of the state. And he scolded the black preachers. It was about 25 of us. If you all let them tear this town up, don't come and ask me for anything. And so I'm just sitting there, everybody's sitting around. And he had the corporation counsel with him. And I raised my hand. I was sitting next to Bishop Brazier, who is a friend of mine. And they didn't call on me, but Brazier was a big dog. He said, Reverend Hatch got a question. And I raised my hand. And I asked the corporation counsel, I said, was Laquan McDonald a ward of the state? And the corporation counsel looked around and dropped his head and said, yes. And because I knew the Bible, okay, wait a minute, one of the most powerful politicians in the world rolled back the re-election by covering up the murder by a policeman of an orphan. This is getting ready to be a cornerstone, a big deal.
What a parallel.
Yeah, that everything in this town going to revolve around this name, Laquan McDonald. And so it turned out to be true. And he couldn't run for re-election a couple of years after that, and all of that. Policeman was convicted. So the book is cornerstones that all these lives mattered.
Yes.
And so I tell their stories, and I talk about the preacher's job to really talk about the value of every human being.
Every life
deserves a eulogy that gives meaning to their lives, and what my processes are of doing that in these instances that I offer in this book. Cornerstones.
I love it. Gospel and Race Podcast, Pastor Marshall Hatch in the house. What a great conversation. We love y'all. We catch y'all on the next one. Peace.